because I'm on vacation, and when we come back, which would be January 6th, we're going to start with Joshua chapters 1 and 2. So, very good book we're going to roll into. All right. Really couple tough chapters, maybe a chapter and a half are difficult to get through, and then we have half a chapter of joy and resurrection, and let's get started.
Only a half a chapter.
Well, 28, chapter 28 is
Okay.
resurrection, and
That's joy.
we get the commission, yes. So we start out on an interesting note. Matthew 27. Judas hangs himself. But of course we have to warm up to that part. So this is Friday morning, Good Friday morning. Early in the morning, all the chief priests and elders of the people made their plans to have Jesus executed. How to have Jesus executed. So they bound him, led him away, and handed him over to Pilate the governor. So they didn't want Jesus to be stoned, which was the only method of execution they had available. They wanted him crucified. So they had to take him to Pilate, the Roman governor, to be crucified. And Pilate, they didn't take Jesus to Pilate because Pilate was a friend of the Jews, because he wasn't. Pilate really hated the Jewish people, and he would take money from the temple coffers to fund aqueducts and other stuff, and he would even have control over the priests' robes. So then he would hold on to the robes until it was time for temple, and then he would give the robes to the priests. So not a good guy. But Pilate didn't want to execute Jesus because he couldn't find any reasons. We hear in John chapter 18, verse 31, Pilate said, "Take him yourselves and judge him by your own law." And the Jewish priests said, "But we have no right to execute anyone," which isn't true. They could have stoned him, but they would have had to prove Jesus would have done something worth stoning. They objected. Pilate was very reluctant to crucify Jesus without proof of his guilt, but he had prior problems with the Jewish leaders, and historians believe he didn't want the aggravation of a confrontation. As you can imagine, there's thousands and thousands of Jewish people in Jerusalem for the Passover and for the Feast of Unleavened Bread. Pilate didn't want any trouble, so he figured, well, I'll just go along with it. Verse 3, when Judas, who had betrayed Jesus, saw that Jesus was condemned, he was seized with remorse and returned the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests. Now, Judas was the formal accuser. He got paid, and he would have taken some of the guilt off of the priests. But here Judas tries to drop the charges, which would mean the Jewish priests would have no charges to get Jesus with, and they wouldn't accept his money. Now, one of the main responsibilities of a priest, as you would expect, is to help people when they have sinned. And Judas comes to him, he says in verse 4, "I have sinned, for I have betrayed innocent blood." But instead of helping Judas through his sins, instead of helping him atone for his sins, they said, "What's that to us? That's your responsibility." It shows how much they wanted to get rid of Jesus. They weren't willing to fulfill their responsibility, which was to help Judas through his sins. So Judas threw the money into the temple and left. Then he went away and hanged himself. So the chief priests, they picked up the coins, but they knew that it was tainted money. They even called it blood money. So they couldn't use that for the temple, so instead they bought a plot of land called Potter's Field, and they used that as a burial place for foreigners because they couldn't use it in the temple. Verse 9. Then what was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet was fulfilled. They took the 30 pieces of silver, the price set on him by the people of Israel, and they used them to buy the potter's field, as the Lord had commanded me. Now actually, this isn't just the prophecy of Jeremiah, it's the blending of two different prophecies, one from Zechariah and one from Jeremiah. And One of the references talks about a potter giving money to a potter, which is kind of relevant because they call the field a potter's field. But Jeremiah 19 references the killing of innocents. And in this case, of course, Jesus was the innocent
QA contractor, hand diamond.
person that they crucified. Not a problem.
All been there.
Now Jesus comes before Pilate in verse 11. Meanwhile, Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, "Are you king of the Jews?" Now this, of course, is what the priests wanted. Because if Jesus said that he's the king of the Jews, that means he wants to overturn the Roman government, which would make him a traitor, and what they were killing traitors by crucifixion at that time. So this is exactly what the Jewish priests wanted. "You have said so," Jesus replied. He didn't deny it. He didn't say, "You're right." I guess he did kind of say, "You're right," because he said, "You have said so." So Jesus is saying, yeah, I'm king of the Jews. When he was accused by the chief priests and the elders, he gave no answer.
Can I interject one thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
But you have said so doesn't say that they're right.
Huh?
You have said so, it's just saying that's what you have said. He's not saying that they're right.
He's not saying that they're right, but he's not saying they're
He's
wrong
not
either.
taking issue.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have said so.
Yeah.
I've also heard you have said, or it is what you say. It is what you say.
My Bible says, yes, it is as you say.
Yeah.
Ah.
Oh, really?
Okay.
Huh.
Is that, what version is that?
New International.
Okay. It is what you say.
It is as you say.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, mine says, the words are yours.
Ah.
And the new one, this is the weird box. Strange.
Karen says
Okay.
the words are yours.
Yeah, that's in there.
Okay.
Hmm.
Don't you hear the priest come back? Don't you hear the testimony that they are bringing against you? Pilate says this. But Jesus made no reply, not even a single charge. And of course, that's what we get from Isaiah chapter 53, verse 7. He was oppressed and afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth. He was led like a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before its shearers is silent, so he did not open his mouth. So once again, Isaiah hits it right on the head. Verse 15, now it was the governor's custom at the festival to release a prisoner chosen by the crowd. At that time, they had a well-known prisoner whose name was Jesus Barabbas. And we all know who Barabbas is. Barabbas did the things that Jesus was accused of. He was a rebel. He was being tried for treason, and he would have been eligible for crucifixion, but the Jewish people wanted him instead.
And his first name was Jesus.
Yeah, some Bibles don't have Jesus in there.
Yeah, I've never heard that.
Yeah.
Huh. Ha, ha, ha.
But. And of course, he was going to save his people a different way. He was going to save his people by removing the Romans. Barabbas would. And
There's a Cecil B. DeMille movie about that.
Probably.
No, I've seen it. Barabbas.
Oh, yeah, Barabbas?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, there's an old movie. Mhm.
Yeah. It's probably pretty wrong, huh?
I have no clue.
We'll have
I
to
haven't
watch
seen it in a long time.
We'll have to watch it.
Yeah.
So while Pilate was sitting in the judge's seat, his wife sent him this message. Don't have anything to do with that innocent man, for I have suffered a great deal today in a dream because of him. And we know that God oftentimes sends people messages through dreams. He sent Joseph messages to save Jesus. And it's not that he wanted to save Jesus in this case, because we know what Jesus had to do. He had to die for us. But I think he might be sending Pilate a message, you know. But the chief priests and the elders persuaded the crowd. So this is one case. Up until now, the Jewish people were kind of innocent in this. It was the Jewish leaders and priests who were pushing. Now, they're having their hand in the death of Jesus. Pilate says, which of the two you want me to release to you? Barabbas they want. What shall then I do with Jesus Christ, who is called the Messiah? Crucify him. What crime has he committed? And all the people say, just louder, crucify him. So Pilate doesn't want any trouble. He knows there's thousands of Jewish people there. He doesn't want to riot. So then he washes his hands. I am innocent of this man's blood. It is your responsibility. Now this is just like in 2 Samuel, where we see, for David has said to him, your blood be on your head, your own mouth testify against you when you said, I have killed the Lord's anointed. And that's basically what the people said. Pilate says, I wash my hands, it's your responsibility. And in verse 25, the people come back. All the people answered, his blood is on us and our children.
Oh, boy.
Yep. Now,
We know what the Christians did with that later.
They-
That and
yeah.
other ones.
something awful. Yeah. One commentator made an interesting observation about verse 25. Says that the people answered, Jesus' blood is on us and our children. So what happened 40 years after Jesus was crucified, the temple in Jerusalem was taken over by the Romans, and it was destroyed. Now, 40 years is one generation, so this commentator said, when the people said, his blood is on us and our children, that curse was limited to that current generation and the children that followed. So I thought that was kind of amazing that 40 years after Jesus was crucified, Jerusalem gets wiped out. The temple gets
70
torn
years,
down.
I think.
No, it happened in 70 AD. Jesus died.
Yeah, okay, I'm
Jesus
sorry.
died
yeah.
in 30. It happened in 70,
Oh.
so 40 years.
Thanks.
That's okay. There's a lot of numbers in the Bible. But Rich, you had a good point before I started talking.
About the blood of our children?
No, maybe I can't remember. Oh well. But I thought that was pretty interesting that the people's curse they called down on themselves was pretty accurate. Then Pilate released Barabbas to the Jewish people. He had Jesus flogged and handed him over to be crucified. Now here's where it gets awful. And this is what you would expect from the Roman soldiers. They weren't great people. You know, this was their whole career as soldiers. They were used to beating up people, killing people. They didn't think twice. And here,
Wish I could pop in. Wish I could pop in.
are you?
I think Jeanette's on the phone, so just keep talking.
Oh, okay.
Okay, go on.
Do you want to let Wilbur back? Unmute him?
Everybody-
Okay.
Yeah, keep going.
Just in case. So Jesus gets taken down to the soldiers, probably down in the prison, and it says a whole company of soldiers. That's 200 soldiers. So you got 200 goofballs around him, and they stripped him, put on a scarlet robe around him, twisted together the crown of thorns and put it on his head. Then they put a staff in his hand, and they mocked him, and they beat him, they spit on him, and this lasted for a couple hours. This is early morning, and it lasted until 9 o'clock when they took Jesus to be crucified. Then we get to the crucifixion of Jesus. I found, I gave these notes out once before. I can't remember what class it was, but it's what was crucifixion like, and it gives a really good explanation of what the process was like and how awful it was. And I remember watching a show on the History Channel, and it's just terrible. And to think that this was the standard process for the Roman soldiers, the Roman government to get rid of people, and that it happened to Jesus.
They'd actually die of asphyxiation.
Yeah.
And when they broke their legs, they died faster because they couldn't push
Yeah.
up.
But the fact they said, in this history thing we saw, the fact that Jesus died as fast as he did was remarkable.
Yeah.
Because he should have lasted a little longer, and they said no.
Well,
So-
because a lot of times these guys would last 3 days
Yeah,
on the cross.
but I think he was only 3 hours or
No, it was 6 hours.
6 hours.
Yeah. It was 9 till 12 was the first period, and then 12 till 3 was the last period.
Got it.
And yeah, so God had mercy on Jesus by letting him die so quickly. And Rich brings up a good point that the other 2 criminals, they had to break their legs so they would suffocate faster because they were coming up to the Sabbath. They had to get them down before nightfall on Friday because the Sabbath was going to start, and they just couldn't have that. And when they went to go break Jesus' legs, they found out that he wasn't breathing. That's when they stuck the spear in his side, and they saw only water came out. So that's why during communion, some people will. There's a kind of a back and forth. Should we say, when you're talking about the bread, should we say, my body broken for you, or my body given for you? Now, I always use my body given for you because Jesus gave himself for us. He wasn't taken, he gave himself freely. Now, some people use broken, and they say they're referring to the spear thrust in the side, that his skin was broken for us, because obviously his legs weren't broken. But both are right. To say either one is wrong, you'd be a legalist. I don't go there. But that's why I say.
Wait, Jean's talking.
Pastor,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
doesn't it say in the Old Testament somewhere that none of Jesus's bones were broken?
I think in I think Psalm 22 talks about his bones are disjointed, but I think you're right. I'm not sure it says broken. I think it says disjointed, which
Okay.
probably would have happened hanging there. Ugh.
And one more thing
Yeah.
regarding Judas' death. It says in my Bible that Matthew states that Judas hanged himself, but Acts 1:18 records that he died by falling. What Judas probably did was throw himself on a sharpened pole or stake.
And that's possible too, because in a lot of cases, instead of calling it impalement, they would call it hoisting on a petard. So kind of lift it up, and that's kind of what Moses did with the snake too. He put the snake on a shaft and lifted him up. So either one could have happened. It's all a language issue. I saw one commentator comment that he said Matthew and Acts could both be right in that Judas hung himself and maybe the limb fell and he fell down to the ground and that squashed him. So who knows what happens?
Got a little bit of everything.
Got a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
The main part is that instead of running to God for forgiveness, Judas hung himself. So I think that's the point that the Bible's trying to get through, and Acts and Matthew both kind of portray the same thing. Judas didn't do what was right. He should have asked for forgiveness, and God would have forgiven him. Oy. Another thing about crucifixion, and it's in the crucifixion supplement, the people that were going to get crucified, they had to carry their own crossbar, which was pretty heavy, maybe anywhere from 40 to 100 pounds. They don't really know. And Jesus was so weakened from the beatings that they had to call on Simon to carry the crossbar for him. And that's in verse 32. And then they forced Simon to carry the cross. They came to a place called Golgotha, which means the place of the skull. And some people say that it probably wasn't on a hill, because what the Romans did when they crucified people, they made sure they put them on the main thoroughfare so everybody could see it as they walked by. So
That would make sense.
kind of makes sense.
Yep.
Could there be a road on a hill? Sure, but who knows?
Just mention it, Psalms 34:20. He protects all his bones, not one of them will be broken.
Did you hear that, Gene? It's from Psalm what?
34?
34:20.
Psalm
Yeah.
34:20. Okay.
Thanks.
Okay.
Good, the mic works.
Don't you love Google?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah. They offered Jesus wine to drink mixed with gall, but after tasting it, he refused to drink it. This was interesting. Gall is a narcotic. So
Really?
I guess the Roman soldiers weren't as cruel as I thought, because they said that they would usually give this drink to the crucified people, so maybe it would kind of put them out in La La Land, but I'm sure it would wear off after a while. But still, that was kind of